takes a what-if idea. What if this technology existed? Present day, it resonates with life as we know it.
This world where a technology's been created where we're living superficial, kind of pseudo-lives.
The surrogates were created for one reason, but once people realized that it could go in an entirely different direction, and it was great, they took it as far as it can go.
I mean, what is our life about right now? It's about technology, and it's about looking as great as you can possibly look.
I love the idea that at the heart of Surrogates is a man whose technology that was developed for medical reasons was corrupted and turned into a tool for everyday vanity.
We did research on some of the basic underlying technology of what is involved with surrogacy.
There's many technologies, biology, nanotechnology.
We've got the capability of creating lifelike motion. We've got the capability of creating lifelike appearance. We've got the remote technology that allows us to communicate.
Please fetch the stapler from the lab.
I will go get the stapler for you.
We bring together all these leading edge technologies, and we're not very far from the world of the surrogates. We're laying the foundation for this based on current sciences. Where is society going given these accelerating technologies?
Go to any newsstand. 90% of the magazines are in some form or another trying to glamorize life. Beautiful people on the cover, whether they're movie stars or models. We're all sort of seeking to sort of perfect ourselves, and at the same time we're all immersed in this technological revolution that's going on.
In the near future, the kind of robot that today is fairly impersonal and looks kind of like a robot is going to shift, and robots are going to start to evolve and look like humans. And people, even today, are playing with these new materials which have a certain degree of look, feel, smell, taste that looks very similar to not just human skin, but other parts of the body.
When I first read the script for Surrogates, there were a tremendous amount of challenges. One was trying to figure out the evolution of the surrogates, from the very first surrogate that Cantor created to where we are now. Do they feel, more like this? Are they more robotic? Are they made of plastic? Are they made of metal? Are their skin silicone? So there was a lot to figure out. Once the skin's on, it becomes a real person. But take it off, and there you have your robot.
It's wonderful what chemists have been able to do with silicone technology. There are certain properties that when these pieces are done right, by painting them from within, they give an even more realistic appearance. Many of our pieces are already that, where you can't discern that there's something there. Fingers in particular can be made in such a way where the margins are almost invisible. This is an example of a prosthetic passive hand we might create. You'll notice it's without any seams whatsoever. The hair is all embedded beneath the surface. We've been able to produce the skin detail right down to the last detail. This person's fingerprints are on here.
What we now have, and it's been around for a while, it's just getting better every year, is the ability to cover an electromechanical component with a lifelike skin. Okay?
I wanted both a cosmetic and functionality in my hand, and this has been a good step towards, what I want.
It's hard to tell unless you really know what to look for, whether they're artificial or human.
So when it comes to our surrogate world, we're relying heavily on actors. They kind of hand-selected, these beautiful men and women to represent these idealized selves.
We have custom surrogates. People, as you would customize your car, have customized their surrogates.
Every plastic surgery option that's available, plus hair color, plus additional height, plus, you design it, basically. It's an avatar, in essence, in a real-world avatar.
If the person operating the surrogate is some overweight, middle-aged man, what would the best version in his mind be of the better version of himself? Could be anything.
Probably the biggest challenge for us is finding this look for the robot version of Greer. It's subtle, but you have to find this sort of balance between sort of artificiality and reality. It's trying to find this youthified and cleaned up version of Bruce that doesn't look too plastic. So there's a sort of a handoff between makeup effects and visual effects, whether he should have more or less beard stubble or how young we want him to look. Trying to make the decisions of what Greer as a human character would have chosen for himself.
Who would want to choose a surrogate that's in their mid-50s? I guess everyone assumed that you would just want to have a surrogate that looks 25 years old and has blonde hair.
Scientist in Japan, what he's done is he's taken that to a whole new level and actually has created not only something that looks very realistic, but the motions are incredibly realistic.
You are talking with my copy. It's not fully articulated, but he speaks through it, its lips move, it looks around. So the basic starting points for these things are in the world today.
What I want to do is understand what is a human by building a robot.
Aesthetically is where they've been having the real problem, and that's what this Japanese researcher and stuff have been trying to get past is once a robot is indistinguishable from a human being, we're perfectly comfortable interacting with it, but if it's that far off, it's very disorienting and people kind of initially resist.
The synthesis between electronic and robotic prosthetics and aesthetic restorations, that's a synthesis that absolutely has to happen. I do believe that there's a real place for covering machines in such a way that they can serve us in a truly human manner.
You are going to have many uses for surrogates today where you could send surrogates into battle. Instead of police, send them in to be able to deal with security situations. I mean, do we really need to send firemen in to fight fires if we've got surrogates and we don't care about them the way we'd care about human beings?
We already have some of that superhuman capability. There's military research going on right now, and there are backpacks and exoskeletons that individuals can wear now that allow them to lift 300-400 pounds and walk with that for an extended period of time.
Everything is done with ease. People can easily lift cars and carry heavy loads with absolutely no physical exertion. People who wouldn't jump out of planes can skydive, and the idea of surrogacy can be pushed to any extreme.
The positive part of the surrogates is it gives people a chance to be able to extend themselves, to be places and to experience things they'd never be able to do. I'd like to be a race car driver and not worry if I'm going to kill myself. In the world of the surrogates, you can do that.
Operating his avatar remotely gives you a unique opportunity to kind of amp up the stakes and the violence or something like that.
You can tear his arms off, you can throw him off buildings, and he still keeps running. So it's a little bit of a Terminator-like quality.
When he pries a gun from his own cold, dead fingers, that was actually my favorite moment.
Ready? Action, Bruce!
It's rough. His arm is half off and he's ripped apart, but he's still hunting me down. It's just not stopping. He has robotic superhuman powers and I do not, but yet it takes him a long time to get me.
It's got some great action. We did a lot of wire work, a lot of flying around.
Ready, and action!
Oh, God.
You don't don't have to be somewhere in order to be physically present. You can be virtually present through a robot. We build robots you can control over the internet.
Anybots is an exciting robotics company that offers a fairly usable, mobile, autonomous robot.
It gives you a sensation of you're present in environment, but you really aren't there.
It's got good cameras, and from your computer you can see what it sees through its eyes. And when it hears something, you hear it. It's got 2 wheels. It can drive up to about 5 miles an hour. If you want to work from home from your beautiful house up in the mountains and send your robot into your cubicle farm in Silicon Valley, you can do that.
This is Monty. He's our telepresence robot with arms. We've had him clear the table and load the dishwasher. We had him make coffee in a French press. We had him open packages.
This backpack has all the electronics needed to sense what I do so that we can move our robot Monty in the exact same way.
From there, it's just a matter of making those robots more sophisticated and more lifelike.
Let's remember that most technologies have evolved with an idea to try to help people. Whether it's healing the sick or augmenting parts of our bodies that need fixing. And that's really where robotics came from.
Well, the human hand, in fact, the human everything, is incredibly sophisticated. You don't appreciate it until you try to build something like it, just how perfect it is.
What we're looking at now is we're realizing how great the human body is, so we're also mimicking anatomy and physiology because we know it's inherently the best design because it stood the test of time.
Clearly, the beginning of robotizing or the cybernetic enhancement of human beings to better them, to cure a disease or to give them greater mobility, it's a positive part of where robotics is going. Eventually, we will cybernetically enhance many parts of our bodies, and some will be extensions of ourself, such as the surrogates.
Technology is great. It frees us to be creative and to be productive and to do all these wonderful things. The flip side to that is that we wind up being servants to it in a certain way.
A lot of us are sort of living in the cyber world, texting each other or living on the internet, and it's an abstract way of communicating.
We can all relate to that feeling of technology kind of spiraling out of control and robbing a little bit of our actual humanity.
For every year that moves forward, the surrogates world is going to be more and more possible. What that means, quite frankly, is an inevitable future. In other words, if we can build it, we will.
Science marches on. Technology marches on. You've got a global population now. It's a global society. And so we may curb what we think is ethically challenging, and yet you've got other people going full steam ahead.
We want to invest in innovation. At the same time, we're going to have to make some pretty tough choices down the road here, which is, what does it mean to be human?
We're becoming sort of depersonalized and less connected to ourselves. And I think what the movie celebrates is our vulnerability. When you see Greer and his wife come together, he loves her frailty, he loves everything about her, everything that these sort of robots are used to disguise. And I think it's the imperfections in us that expose some of our most beautiful qualities and make us individual.
The film asks the important question, and it may be a wake-up call for us to ask more today, where's technology going? Is every technology one that should be embraced and supported? Is every technology should be integrated into our lifestyle? We've got to ask ourselves, is that a future we want? Or is that a future that we want to change?
What are you doing?
I want to check out what's down this alley.
Sure, I know what you want to check out, but I don't think this is the best weather for it. On the other hand, I suppose I could loosen up just someone's coming.
I'm a fan of science fiction. I used to read science fiction when I was a kid, so I was intrigued by the concept.
I just loved the story and called Rob Venditti, the writer, wanted to kind of know who he was and what led him to kind of come up with that idea.
You mind? The lady would like some privacy. What's your problem, man?
I read a sociology book, an actual study of these people who were involved in this sort of online, one of these early online, community type games, and how these people just became so involved in this game that they would lose their jobs or get divorced or things like that because they just couldn't separate their lives from this persona they created. My idea was, what if you could create this persona and that persona could actually go to work and earn that money for you, and now you can be that all the time? What would that do to personal relationships, and how would society work in that atmosphere?
Get your damn hands off!
I was working in the warehouse for Top Shelf Productions, which is the publisher of the graphic novel, and wrote the script for the Surrogates and showed it to the publisher. They ended up liking it, and so they published it. So I started out in the mailroom.
Nearest building. Emergency stop. Please proceed carefully to the nearest building. Emergency stop.
His script was surprisingly advanced for where he was coming into comics. And it was just my job to take that and bring it to the level that it needed to be.
Isn't it strange how the things we look for often find us when we least expect them? What do you want?
Working with Brett Weldley on the book was really just extraordinary and a great thrill for me. Some of the things like his design for Greer, it was literally like he pulled it out of my head. But other things too, and equally as thrilling, was to see him bring his own unique style with the color palette that he chose and things like his sort of mixed media approach to the artwork and things like that.
You have traded flesh and bone for cosmetics and alloy. You live a filtered life. You asked what I want. Everyone dreams of changing the world. I only want to change it back. Wait!
Style is a part and parcel of what the story is trying to say, and the story is kind of a dark story. So I took a very neutral palette with the world because it's very much a manufactured world. So the surrogate world is very blue and gray. Whereas when you get to the Dread Reservation, it's very earth tone, it's very real.
To actually have somebody draw the things I was describing and to be able to hold the art in my hands, to think that these words that I wrote down could become something like that, it was just really the best part about the whole thing.
These recent attacks are jeopardizing the agreement that protects you and your people, pal.
Prepare yourself, Lieutenant. The day of the Lord is coming like a thief in the night.
The initial response to the book was really beyond anything I had anticipated, because it was the very first thing, literally, that I'd ever had in print.
This was just kind of talked about and buzzed about online in some of the comic book community's message board as this fantastic graphic novel that no one really knew about. As soon as I read it, it struck me as an obvious film.
The graphic novel was a great way on paper to present what the story was, but for a movie, it's a whole different set of circumstances. You really had to go to the core of what the story was and then build the movie out from there.
Well, this will sound very Hollywood convenient, but as Rob Venditti, the creator, can tell you, when he and I first were discussing this project, the immediate name that came to mind was Bruce Willis.
We both thought to ourselves that Bruce Willis would be the perfect lead because he can be the tough cop, but he could also be vulnerable and handle the relationship between Greer and his wife Margaret and the strain there.
Tom, I don't want you going there without your story ever again. Tom.
It's just a scratch, Margaret. It's fine.
Just a scratch this time. I want you to get a replacement unit tomorrow.
There is a convoluted love story in there that he's just trying to save his wife.
I've seen the effect surrogates can have on people. I see it every day.
People? Why don't you just say it, Harvey? You mean me.
What do you want from me?
My wife.
To him, the beauty is all false and the happiness is all false and everything's false, but she couldn't face the world as her real self anymore.
I am your wife.
No, you're not. Maggie, don't walk away from me.
That actually, to me, and I think to Todd and to David Hoberman, to Jonathan Mostow, everyone, that was the kind of central core of the story that really put it kind of at a different level.
Take 5, will you, Art? These two aren't going anywhere.
Sorry, Sergeant.
The experience is just extraordinary. To think that this idea has grown into this movie, it's a huge compliment to think that this little idea could inspire so much action.
Looks like a couple of fry jobs. A flash storm moved through about a half hour ago.
The true science fiction classics have always been set in alternative worlds, and yet in it we recognize something about the human experience that feels very, very truthful. And every scene in this movie resonates with the core idea behind the graphic novel.